Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. This is Jessica with K&A Greenhouse, and in this presentation I will be talking about the new evergreens that we'll be getting in at each of the nursery yards in the 2023 season. And as a note, that doesn't necessarily mean that the varieties that I discuss in here are new on the market this year, though some of them will be. Some are also just ones that I have not been able to get in the past and will be getting in this year that we haven't had in previous seasons. So follow along. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so the first new evergreen plant that we're getting in for the 2023 season is called Juniper Emerald Feather. This one, I've had a couple of people asking for it the last season or two. I'm finally able to get it in this season, so hopefully we have some people that really enjoy it. It is a green needled juniper. As you can see from the photos here, it does have a pyramid shape. And it will get blueberries as well. So if you are a bird nerd like I am, then if you plant this particular juniper in your garden, you will have the birds that will eat the berries once the tree is mature enough to get those berries. The size on this one is about 10 to 12 feet tall and approximately 5 feet wide, give or take. It'll be wider at the bottom than it is at the top just because of the way it grows, kind of a pear shape instead of just a columnar shape. And this, because it's a juniper, does prefer sandier soils, well-drained soils. It's not really gonna like heavy, wet clay soils. So if you have that particular soil in your landscape, I would steer more towards something like an arborvitae instead, or hemlock, if you can do something like that, versus something like a juniper. With that said, because it's a juniper and it prefers sandier soils, it also is drought tolerant once it gets established. So the first 3 years you will have to give it regular waterings if Mother Nature doesn't provide that for us. And once it does get the root system established there, it's very drought tolerant. You won't need to keep watering it every 3-4 days like you do the first year or so after planting. And this juniper also is hardy to zone 3, so it'll grow just about anywhere here in Wisconsin. Some junipers are deer resistant, some are not. It really just depends on how hungry the deer are. I have a few of them, junipers, I should clarify, I have a few junipers planted on my property, and the deer that we have that live in our woods will eat them some winters and other winters not. So like I said, it depends on how desperate they get, depends on how hard the winter is. So if you do have a deer problem like I do, I tend to either fence them off while they're young or spray them with some sort of deer repellent just to keep them off of those particular plants. And I'm getting this particular weeping juniper in, which is definitely not new on the market. This one, I remember, was planted at a garden center I worked at back when I was working in Appleton in my late 20s. So this has been around for a very long time. It's hard to come by. They don't produce a lot of them anymore because it is such an older species or older variety. But I just really like the way that each of the branches is very pendulous. It's almost stringy. One of the websites I was on was saying that each branch is almost like a string versus, some of the spruces have more of that bold weeping texture, where this one is very delicate and airy and dainty, especially for a juniper. The needles on this one are a kind of a blue-gray, blue-green color, depending on how much sun it gets. So it is a little bit different than the usual evergreens that are green. So as I said in one of my other presentations, generally I like to put something that has yellow color or maroon color by something like this with the blue-green, just because it's a really nice color contrast. And at least to my eye, it looks really attractive. So that's just a random landscape design tip for you. Hardy to zone 3 with this particular plant. The height and size really depends on the plant itself. Each one is going to vary, so sometimes they're just really tall and skinny, especially if you continue to stake them up to get them to grow taller. It won't be quite as wide, but if you don't stake them up past 5-6 feet, then it'll start to grow wider instead of taller. So that's really kind of, size really depends on what you want in your landscape and what you want to do for staking it up. And here is another weeping evergreen. This one is a Serbian spruce. It's been again on the market for a couple of years, just hard for me to get it in from our suppliers. We have a few coming in from Isley Nursery this year out on the west coast, so I'm sure they'll be gorgeous plants when we do get them in. As you can see from the photos, it really varies based on, again, with height and width of these plants, based on how much you want to stake them up, and really it kind of depends on their genetics too. So to me, these look like Dr. Seuss plants that you would see in the Lorax. They can be tall and skinny. They have really weird leaders on them. Sometimes they have double or triple leaders. So it's just a very unusual plant and very pretty. Because it's a Serbian spruce, it will have those green needles on the top part of the needles, and the undersides will have that silvery color. So especially when the new growth comes out, you'll really be able to see that silvery color. Serbian spruce and this one are hardy to zone 4, so still pretty hardy for here in Wisconsin, just not as far north in northern Wisconsin. And they do prefer full sun, so if you have a full sun spot, part sun will be okay, it just won't grow quite as fast. And Serbian spruce are slow growing anyway, so I generally would try to keep this one in 6 hours or more of sun every day if you can. It's, as you can see, it's a nice accent plant. Definitely will draw your eye wherever you decide to put it in the landscape. And for soil types, do not put this in a wet spot. It does not like to have wet feet. So most evergreens, generally speaking, do prefer to have dry, well-drained soils. There's not many of them that will tolerate a wet site. This one is definitely no exception to that particular rule. So a lot of people are now looking for the blue spruce fastigiata, which I am not able to find this year. What I can find is what Isley Nursery is selling in its place, because they don't have any just fastigiatas to sell. They have one called Fastigiata Sport. So it's a sport of their fastigiata types. The kind of caveat with that is they don't know the mature size. Because they haven't had them trialing long enough, these are basically plants that they took and have rooted in, and they're growing in pots, but they don't have any in their trial gardens. They assume that it's going to be very similar to the growing habit and hopefully the mature size of the fastigiata. With that said, I was told, fastigiata gets to be about 12 feet, 10 to 12 feet tall, and it's a very narrow plant. It's a columnar growing habit, so it'll be 3 to 4 feet wide. They're hoping that the sports will also be about that. It could happen that they end up growing a little bit taller or a little bit wider, so it's not going to be super skinny like the fastigiata, but if you do have a little bit more space, it is still a really nice columnar evergreen that you can put in your landscape. The blue needles will be on the plant year round, and as a note, I'm sure if you've talked to me at all about blue spruce, you know that we have a lot of problems here in Wisconsin with a lot of the needle diseases on blue spruce, just because they don't like our clay soils. They're more native to, the Colorado Rockies, so we don't exactly have that kind of temperate zone here in Wisconsin. With that said, some of the varieties, if they're like a dwarf type or something like this where it's columnar, by the time the plants get stressed out enough to actually get the disease, it's about time that they would be coming out of the landscape anyway, just because ornamental types like this tend to only last in the landscape 10 or 15 years, whereas the Colorado blue spruce evergreens, you want them in the landscape for a very long time. So it may or may not make a difference with the needle diseases we see. I don't know. With this one, I guess it's just a big question mark. If you want to take a chance and see what it does, feel free. I'm getting it in just to see what they look like and what they can do for us here in Wisconsin, and as another offering of something that would be a columnar growing habit for a full sun spot. Okay, so this one is a white pine called Green Twist. I don't have that many of them coming in this year. I think I have 2 at each location. That's all that Isley Nursery had left when I ordered them, so I kind of took their last inventory availability there. This one is the dwarf of mini twist. So if you don't have the space for mini twist, this is definitely an option for you. It's a 1.5 to 2 foot tall plant, about the same width, maybe a little bit wider, like 2 to 3 feet wide. The needles on it are that green, and when it's the new needles, new growth for the year, will be kind of like a blue green instead of just the green that the older growth will be. And the needles on them, from the name, you can tell they're kind of a twisty instead of just a straight needle. They kind of twist and bend over that stem. I have the mini twist in my landscape, and every year it looks a little bit different just because each time the new growth comes out, it's a little bit of a different twist. It's not always the same, wave or twist on the plants. This plant is hardy to zone 3, so you can grow it just about anywhere here in Wisconsin, which is really nice. They will grow in full sun. I do have mine on the south side of my house, so it gets beat by the sun pretty much all day long, and it's perfectly happy where I have it in the rock garden. It will tolerate part shade though because it's a white pine. So if you do have a spot that gets more like 4 to 6 hours of sun a day, that would be perfectly fine for this one as well. This is a new Pinus sylvestris called Troll Gould, or Troll Gold. Figured being from Mount Horeb, I should probably support the trolls that we have going on there. This is a new variety. I'm pretty sure it's new on the market even. I don't remember if we're getting it from Bazan or from Isley Nursery, but one of the two big guys that we get from out in Oregon State. This one will have the yellow needles for the entire year. Some of the ones that we've gotten in the past, like the Mugo pines, like Harston's Gold and Winter Sun, they will be yellow in the winter but green in the summer. This one stays yellow year round. So if you really like that yellow color, that you don't want something like an arborvitae, this would definitely be an option for you. Mature size on it is about 6 feet tall and 9 feet wide, so it does have that pyramid growth shape. Bottom is going to be a lot taller bottom is going to be wider than the height of the plant. It does start out more of a globe shape, and as it ages, the top is just going to come and elongate out of the center there and become more of a pyramid shaped. As a note, this is a very slow growing plant, so you can expect probably about 4, maybe 5 inches of growth every year out of it. So don't expect it to be 6 feet tall in 3-4 years. It'll take a very long time for it to get to be mature size. And this one also prefers full sun just because of the yellow needles. If you put it in a part shade, it'll probably be more of a lime green, maybe even green in part shade. So definitely full sun for this one. Well-drained soils. Absolutely do not put it in a spot that will have any kind of standing water, even if it's just standing water in the spring, because they really, really don't like to have the wet feet. So this one, like I said, it's very new to us on the market. I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like when it comes in. So it seems columnar evergreens seem to be a big thing the last couple of years. I'm having trouble finding the Hicks U, so I'm hoping that this one will kind of fit that bill also. It's a zone 5 U, so it's not one of the more hardier ones. You will need to protect this. I wouldn't put this, as a hedge along the edge of your property because it'll probably brown out from the winter winds. But if you just wanted something tall and skinny near your house, that would be perfectly fine. This particular U can grow full sun to full shade. And it's actually a slow growing yew, which is unusual because usually, we have the Taunton and the dark green yews, those grow like weeds. So this one takes a little bit longer to get to its mature size and fill in like it's supposed to. Mature height on this one is about 5 to 6 feet, but only about 2 feet wide. So it really doesn't take up all that much space. It just gives you kind of the nice height if you're looking for that, like I said, in your landscape, kind of a backdrop almost for something else to put in front of it. And this one, moist, well-drained soils are best. It can handle a little bit of water, but I wouldn't put it in a spot, that gets standing water, because again, most evergreens don't really appreciate having wet feet all that much. And as always with yews, the deer and rabbits really like it, especially in the winter. So when it's younger, I would definitely fence this off or do what I do and just spray the plants to keep the deer from munching too much in the winter months. I believe this particular arborvitae was new last year on the market. I just was not able to get it. So this year we have Amber Glow coming in. It's spring and summer. It will be kind of a chartreuse yellow, lime green color. In the fall, it's a bright yellow. And then in the winter months, you'll see on the right-hand picture underneath the name of the plant, it's more of that amber, almost brown color. So just as a note, some people do like that in their landscape, but if you buy it and then it turns this brown color, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has winter burn and it's died. Sometimes this is just what the plant goes through as the seasons change. So Amber Glow is going to be 3 to 4 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide at maturity. Not a lot of pruning is required. It will just have the globe shape, just kind of a ball. If there's sometimes the branch will get a little bit unruly, you can just prune that back, but you shouldn't need to prune it to keep it in the globe shape. And with arbs, they do handle a little bit wetter soils. They handle clay soils a little bit better than some other of the evergreens that we were talking about before, like the junipers. So this is a better option if you have full sun to part sun, and you have those clay soils that you just need, a pop of color in your landscape too. Right, another new arborvitae is called Lemon Burst. This one is coming to us from Bailey Nurseries in Minnesota. Pyramid shaped, as you can see here. This is a pretty young specimen. There's not a lot of mature size photos out there just yet because it is so new on the market. But it does have that pyramid shape. It'll be 4 to 6 feet tall and about the same width. Maybe a little bit less, like 3 to 4, possibly 5 feet wide. This is a nice sub if you like the Technito arborvitae, but you want more of a color pop to have more of that yellow color instead of the green color that the Technito usually has. And again, you don't really need to prune it to get it to have this pyramid shape. This is just pretty much what it grows in, so you don't need to do a lot of pruning to keep it this nice, neat appearance in your landscape. So hardy to zone 4, as most arborvitae are that we sell at K&A. Definitely the first couple years though, make sure you give it enough water. A big problem with especially arborvitae is if you don't water them enough in summer and fall, they don't have enough water reserves in their needles, and then by February or March in the spring, you'll start to see them browning out, and then that's basically due to the winter winds that we get all winter long just whipping on this plant. So make sure you give it enough water. Once it gets established, you shouldn't need to give it a lot of regular waterings, every time we get a drought, yes, but every 3 to 4 days, not so much after the first couple of years. Tolerant of most soil types, it'll do clay to sand and kind of anywhere in between whatever soil pH you have. So this is a nice little guy. Just have something a little bit different, like I said, than the Technito. I know a lot of people are looking for the shorter, but also still pyramid shaped. So hopefully this fits the bill for some people. And our final new evergreen for the season, and also our final new arborvitae for the season, is called Tiny Tower. I do think it's kind of a funny name because it's listed as a dwarf of the green giant arborvitae, if you're familiar with that one. But Tiny Tower still gets 18 to 20 feet tall. So it's still taller than a majority of the columnar or pyramid shaped arborvitae that we sell in the nursery yard. It's shorter than the green giant. So Tiny Tower, 18 to 20 feet tall, about 5 or 6 feet wide, fairly new on the market. It's another pyramid shaped. You don't need to do pruning on it. Will tolerate most soil types. The one note I have though is it's hardy to zone 5 instead of zone 4, so be especially careful with this one. If you do want to plant it as a hedge, just make sure that you're spraying it in the fall to help keep the water in the needles. Otherwise, a great spot for it is really closer to your house, so it's not as exposed in the winter months. And that pretty much covers it for the new evergreens we have coming in for 2023. If you do have any questions on anything in here, or questions for me, you can feel free to email me at knagreenhouse@gmail.com. If you just put "Attention Jessica" in the subject line, I'll make sure to go ahead and check that. Or you can reach me on my work cell. You can text me or call me on the number 920-415-4474. And if I'm not in that day, usually my voicemail message will let you know that I'm out of the office, but I will get back to you as soon as I'm able and I'm back in the office again. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Think spring, as it's snowing outside as I'm doing this presentation. So hopefully we'll start seeing the green stuff coming up pretty soon here.